It's so great. Thank you so much. Thanks, John Pizzarelli. Thank you for being here. John Clayton, Mr.
Pleasure.
Clayton.
Man.
Should I put my Grammy in the back? You got gold platinum records back there.
You got all kind of stuff hanging on your wall. I just got, those really aren't mine. I borrowed them from Christian McBride.
These are all of Jess's shows. They're none of mine.
Okay, we're even.
That's so awesome. Can't you get one you can wear around your neck or something? I mean, I think it'd be cool.
I like the way he thinks.
Well, yeah, you guys, between all of the awards that you've gotten, and all the people you've played with, and all the work you've done yourself solo, I'm humbled. We're here today online with John Clayton and John Pizzarelli, who are coming here to Cleveland on Saturday, June 25th at 8:15 p.m. at the Connor Palace as part of Tri-C Jazz Fest. We're so honored to have you guys here and back again, because I know you guys have visited Cleveland in the past and been a part of the Jazz Fest. You know, where to start with you guys, because I want to get into what you're doing in this show. I mean, I want people to know about your backgrounds, because you have, I don't know, John Clayton, bassist, play with Diana Krall, Paul McCartney, Gladys Knight. Where do you stop? I was interested to hear you did the arrangement for Whitney Houston's 1990 Super Bowl performance that went platinum, that everybody references still to this day. Wow, hats off for that. But you do the Clayton-Hamilton Jazz Orchestra for years and years now, and you guys have played together in that arrangement with John Pizzarelli. And John Pizzarelli, coming from great family with Bucky, your father, who was an important influence for you. And your brother, I was interested to hear you co-produced a James Taylor album, American Standard, that was nominated for a Grammy either. Congratulations on that.
Yes, and it won the Grammy.
Good for you.
You got to say you won when you won.
That was great.
That's the only one.
I so appreciate you guys taking a few moments. So tell us, because how important is Frank Sinatra in the world of jazz? My first question really to you guys is he even a jazz singer, John Clayton? Is Frank Sinatra really a jazz singer?
You know what? I hate those monikers, those pigeonholes, because they're not cut and dry. They're not black and white. It's not that they kind of bleed into each other. So if you improvise, right, and if you improvise, understanding some of the sensibilities of the style of music that you're improvising in this case jazz, then I guess that makes you, in some sense, a jazz singer. Would Sinatra call himself a jazz singer? Probably not, you know. But as when I hear him make certain embellishments to a melody, then that's reminiscent of something he heard Harry Sweets Edison do, or Basie do, or Ellington do, then I'm kind of going, well, yeah, you know, maybe that's not your full-time label or full-time focus, but you're touching it. You're making it a part of what you do.
Yeah.
So in that sense, yeah, I think, you know, was he a jazz musician like John Pizzarelli is, or like I am, or like other people are? No, maybe not. But so it's hard. That's a really hard one to answer. And the other thing is that musicians don't attach the labels to themselves. That's always everybody else doing it. Because if you say to John Pizzarelli, oh yeah, you're a jazz musician, he's gonna go, yeah, but because in his eyes, him understanding who he is, me understanding who I am, every musician understanding who they are, yeah, I do that, I love that, I'm interested in that, but that's not all I do. Yeah, I you know, hence James Taylor, hence the Beatles, Paul McCartney, da-da-da-da-da. All those things are part of who he is, or part of who other musicians are. So we don't put labels on it.
I do think maybe the only label I actually always just go with just musician, and I think the only difference being with Sinatra is that I think in the time frame that they all came up in, when you think about Sinatra and Peggy Lee and Ella Fitzgerald and Nat King Cole and that group of singers, they were just singers. You know, I don't think they even thought of maybe as pop singers, but the idea that a Sinatra could make a record with the Basie Band or with the Ellington and do those kinds of things. There were a lot of people who tried to do those things and maybe not as successfully. So it was just something that he did. And I agree with John. It's just not, I don't think, coming from where they came from, I don't think they were just singers in those days. Maybe they were just pop singers as we thought of Paul McCartney and James Taylor a generation later. So, but the brilliance, I think, is just hearing how, I thought Sinatra sang so great with the Basie Band. It was something that band really knew how to stand in front of that band and respond to what they were giving him. And it was always so exciting to hear those two entities together.
And jazz was more of a pop music thing coming up in those days. You know, I know my dad was playing Sinatra. They were playing big band. It was jazz was really what they were into it. It was a thing. Musicianship was a thing, you know, improvisation was a thing, which we kind of got out of once rock and roll hit. So, you know, you layer that on top of a pop singer like a Sinatra. So talk about, I mean, because you guys are both, John Clayton, you toured with the Count Basie Orchestra as well. And John Pizzarelli, Benny Goodman, Zoot Sims. So you guys are very familiar with this. And you did this album, Dear Mr. Sinatra, back in '06. Right. And John Clayton, talk about as the arranger, you know, famous arrangements of Basie and Nelson Riddle. And you guys had to go up against that. And you're like, we're gonna make our mark here. What was that like?
Well, from an arranger standpoint, it wasn't that difficult. Pardon me, because when you're doing an arrangement of song, you've got enough givens to help you along. So you got the song, you maybe have discussed with I will have discussed with John perhaps the tempo of the song. So you got the song, you got the melody, you got the tempo, you got the key, you know it's only going to be so long, you know that you want to drive the ear to the singer, right? And maybe you're going to have some other things. You're going to have an intro. You're going to have this little section where the band kind of reaches a climax with it. And then you go back to the vocal. So all these things are in play. It makes it a lot less, pardon me, work and cumbersome because of those elements. So I know that I have my freedom within those boundaries. And thinking about John and how he sings and what he's about, you put all that together, understanding the musicians that you're writing for as well and their sounds and their personalities, it starts winnowing it down to a really deep understanding of how you need to handle things. And still, there's a lot of freedom for me within that. But that's how I do. If somebody says to me, hey, I want you to write a composition for me. And I say, okay, what do you need? They'll say, whatever you want. That's the hardest thing to do. I got to come up with all that stuff that I just explained. Yeah. And I love doing it. It's no problem. But that takes a lot more work and a lot more whatever to get together than arranging.
Well, then let me ask John P. When you go ahead, because when you go to sing and you're coming up against the Frank Sinatra, and now you're interpreting something, I mean, that's got to be a little mind blowing as well.
Well, you know, the goal, I think there's two things at work. You know, I've heard so many records where guys make records of Sinatra. You know, we're celebrating Sinatra here, or Sinatra there, or Sinatra with this, and they do the same arrangements and they sing over the same arrangement. And in this case, the idea was I picked a majority of the songs that were written for Sinatra, like Ring a Ding Ding and Witchcraft and Nice and Easy, to name three. And when I said, and when John and I talked about it, it wasn't about, we never even used the word homage. I just said, it's your band. The people who know the material from Sinatra's world, because of that worked out. And we write for, and he knew how to write for me, and also how to write for his band. So if you hear How About You, he features the saxophone section and his brother playing a beautiful alto solo. And on You Make Me Feel So Young, it's a feature for Jeff Hamilton. And there was no like, we're going to copy what's happened. It was about the band and how well that band delivers those things. And then when we said Under My Skin, we weren't going to go ba-da-da-da-da. That's been done. So I said, we should do Under My Skin maybe as a ballad. What do you think? And great. And he came up with a great arrangement of that. So those kinds of things, it was never the idea that it was about John's and Jeff's and John's band, making their kind of music for their guys and delivering that and making a pocket for me to sing under and then occasionally be a soloist. That was the goal.
Well, that's awesome. And I'm sure that each one of you must have at least one cool Frank Sinatra story that either personal or that you've heard. And I know we talked about this, so I know who wants to go first? John Clayton?
I'll go first because mine is less interesting, although it's still amazing. And that I was 19 years old. I was for a period living in Palm Springs, playing a 6-night-a-week gig in one of the hotels in Palm Springs with this great trombone player who used to play with Glenn Gray Casaloma, and his name was Murray McEachern. So I was in Murray McEachern's quartet. He was teaching me all these tunes. So that was all going on. And Sinatra, of course, lived in Palm Springs. So he came in this was a gig, the last gig I was basically going to do, steady gig before moving to Indiana to study at Indiana University, which is where I met Jeff Hamilton. So I'm doing this gig with Murray McEachern, and Frank Sinatra walks in with a small entourage, and he sits and he listens to a set of our music. And at the end of the set, Murray McEachern, who knew Frank, said, "Hey, John, you want to come meet Frank Sinatra?" And I said, "Sure." So I walked over, and Murray introduced me to Frank Sinatra. And Frank said to me, I told him, "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Sinatra." And he said, "Hey, I hear you're going to go to Indiana University." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "That's a great school." He said, "I was trying to talk my kid into going to school there, but he wanted to do something else. Anyway, it's a great school." He said, "Listen, if you need any help, call me."
Wow.
First time I met Frank Sinatra, I tell him I'm going to Indiana University, or he already knew. And he's offering to help me in any way. So that's my Frank Sinatra story. It was 19 years old. Amazing.
You're destined to do this. Didn't you feel destined at that moment? Like, God, this is my life.
Yeah, that was, man, I have so many marks over my body where I pinched myself, man. That took a major pinch.
That's great. All right, John Pizzarelli, you got to top that one, man. What do you?
I used my really good story for the show, but
okay. I appreciate that.
You know, my father played guitar my father was opening. George Shearing was opening for Sinatra at Carnegie Hall. Oh, actually, no. Just Sinatra was at Carnegie Hall, and my father was playing across the street, across the way at the Pierre Hotel. And he said to my sister one day, he said, "Come on, let's go see Tony Mottola. He's playing for Frank. We should say hello." And my sister said, "There's no way you're going to get in to backstage. You can't do it." He said, "Come with me." And my father worked at the Pierre in a tux, so he had his guitar with him. He had my sister on his arm, and he walked to the door, the backstage door, and they opened the door, and he walked right in, up the stairs, And 5 minutes later, he was standing next to Frank Sinatra. And he's like, "Where's Tony?" He said, "Tony's over there." And he just managed, he walked right into the backstage of Carnegie Hall. All you needed was a tux and a guitar, and you could break security very simply. And that was...
I got to remember that.
Always be well dressed.
That's how I'm going to get backstage whenever I see the Clayton-Hamilton Orchestra anywhere.
I know. So what are you guys going to do in Cleveland? Just a brief, I don't want you to give away any of the great stories, but what do you have planned, and what should we look forward to? Mr. Clayton.
Well, we're definitely going to draw from our album together. We seldom get to do that. So this is a really big deal for us. And in talking about the material that we were going to do, I discovered an arrangement I did for John that we'd never played before. So we're actually going to premiere something, which is out of the Sinatra book. So we're both really excited about that. So yeah, we're going to do a handful of those things.
Nice.
What are you gonna start with a bunch of stuff too?
Yeah, we'll do a few songs to just kind of get everybody, whet their appetite, get them in the mood. And then we bring out the big guns, John Pizzarelli.
Before I let you guys go, I know you all have worked with Tommy LaPuma, who was very instrumental in the program here in Cleveland, came from Cleveland, and he gave back so much. I took my son out of school one day when he was doing a session down at Tri-C, because it was just such a lesson to sit in the room. And I said, "Tomorrow you're not going to school. I'm taking you down to Tri-C."
You're a good dad.
Well, we'll see. But and he is a full-time musician now. But just
Bravo.
Watching how he produced. He was out in the studio with the music. He wasn't behind the booth. He wasn't working through the microphone and talk. He was out in the studio right next to the musicians. Try it this way, try that, move up to the mic. So what Cleveland connections do you guys have, whether it's Tommy LaPuma or something else? I don't know. John Pizzarelli, anything that comes to mind?
Well, Telarc, my record company, was based there for many years, and we always played Nighttown, which was there also for many years up in the Heights.
Yeah. And
having worked with Tommy on the McCartney project, as both John and I did, was thrilling. And I got to see Tommy work with David Sanborn. He made a record called Pearls in New York City with an orchestra, and it was thrilling. I mean, it was always great to be around Tommy because he loved the guy so much, and he was, it was always fun. And he was, I'll never forget the phone call, and you can hear Tommy's hand on his forehead when he was going, hey man, I've got a record date for you. I can't tell you who it's with. It's with Paul McCartney. It was just great. He was a fun guy, and he was always so supportive of what I was doing too. So I love the guy dearly.
I did too.
Awesome.
I mean, I've got endless Tommy LaPuma stories, but just to give you an idea of how big he was as a person, and this is something that, Cleveland really sees how big his heart was, and I experienced it on so many times on so many levels. But one of the big ones, I had done some recordings for him as a player, as a bass player. But at some point, he knew that I wrote, and at some point he said, I'd like for you to do some string arrangements for this album, another Clevelandite, Little Jimmy Scott. And I said, man, sure. So this is going to be like my entry into writing orchestra stuff for Tommy LaPuma. He'd only heard my big band stuff. So we came in, the tracks were already laid down by Kenny Barron, Ron Carter. I think Grady Tate was on it. tracks are already there. I'm adding strings to it. String orchestras in Los Angeles. So going to Capitol Studios. They play the track. The strings play my arrangement. When we're done reading through it, the string players put down their instruments and applauded me. I mean, it was so humbling. I was like, you know, burgundy faced, hot, like, oh my God. And so I go, and Tommy LaPuma says, hey, John, come into the booth. Let's listen back. I said, great, sure. Go in. I'm feeling real good. And then we listen back, and Tommy, we get about 6 seconds in, Tommy said, oh, right there, John, what you wrote kind of gets in the way of the vocal right there. And I said, okay, well, I'll take that away. We'll get rid of that. We go on, and he says, oh, right there. I think that's, you know, I can't understand what Jimmy Scott's singing there. So maybe we should clear that. Okay, yeah. Basically, when we were done, he had eliminated about 60% of what I had written. And he was right. He was absolutely right. It was the biggest lesson I'd had to that point I can remember. And when we were done, I was embarrassed because I should have known those things. But given all that, he kept opening doors for me. He called me again and again to write and to play because he believed in me. He saw something there that he connected with, you know, not only as a person. We could have been friends and continued to have amazing Italian meals, you know, but no, he went a step further. He kept calling me and giving me these interesting projects as a player and as a writer. So all that to say that was the Tommy LaPuma, that was the Cleveland that I knew and loved. And so that Tommy combined with Terry Pentrimoli and Tri-C Jazz Festival, them always giving me opportunities. I'm totally grateful and humbled.
John P.
I was going to say, you know, when I don't know if I was at Tommy's house or in a studio or something, and he's like, you got to hear this new thing, man. It's really great. And he played a chart that John had written for, I don't know if it was Dr. John or Leon Russell, right?
Mm.
Did you write and he's,
yeah.
And I was like, geez. And I was saying, who wrote the chart? It's killing. He goes, it's John Clayton. He says, he's like the new Ernie Wilkins, this guy. He's fantastic.
When did we meet, Pitts?
We met, I have the picture of me and you. I have a picture of you and my father in Denver. We met in Denver at the Dick.
I know we met in Denver. What year was that, though?
85 or
85.
84. They were there both of those years. So I was 24. So were you.
That's right. Yeah, my man. That's the year I started the Clayton-Hamilton Jazz Orchestra.
Yeah. And there's another picture. There's a picture of me with, I showed it to Isaiah the other day. It's me, and I'm at the end of the picture, and it's Benny Carter and Buddy Tate and Sweets Edison and Jeff's on drums. And,
that's great. That's great. Man.
I can almost remember it.
Yeah, right. Can almost remember it.
Wow.
All right.
Wow.
I look forward to seeing it, John.
Yeah, me too, babe.
There is quite a legacy here that Tommy left and that the Tri-C Jazz Fest now continues to bring year after year, even through these tough times here these past couple years. It's so good to have you guys coming back and working together again and lighting it up for Sinatra. We're looking forward to it so much. Thank you guys for taking a few moments here in the afternoon and chatting. We could talk. You guys have stories. This could go on for a long time, but we'll tell them to come to the show, right? If they want to hear some more stories, that's it. Where you get it.
And music.
Thank you, John Clayton. Thank you, John Pizzarelli.
All right, Thomas.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
It's Thomas Mulready from Cool Cleveland. Have a great week in Cool Cleveland.